Today, we're gonna look at wrestling legends who ruined their own legacy, starting with the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. In 2010, HBK had the perfect retirement. He faced The Undertaker at WrestleMania. It was the streak versus his career, and what followed was an epic 24-minute clash between two legends. In the end, Shawn Michaels lost the match. It was time for him to retire, and he did. After a legendary career, the Heartbreak Kid hung up the boots and walked away from the in-ring competition. Sure, we did see him act as a special guest referee here and there, or he did make some special appearances. There were even a few times where he almost returned to wrestle against wrestlers like Daniel Bryan, Dolph Ziggler, and even AJ Styles. Although those were close to happening, he stuck to his word and decided to stay retired. That was until WWE held pay-per-views in Saudi Arabia, and they offered him millions of dollars to return for one final match, and HBK quickly sold his soul, shaved his head, and got back in that ring. I'm not gonna lie, he still had some juice in him, but everyone else in that match was completely washed. Triple H also tore his pec, and the match was a complete disaster. It was honestly depressing to see DX and the Brothers of Destruction look so washed. They were untouchable in their prime, but here they looked horrible. Everyone wishes that Shawn Michaels would just have stayed retired, and if he really wanted to come back for one more match, then honestly it should have been with AJ Styles. I think those two could have tore the house down and created some magic in 2017. Ric Flair ruined his legacy in a similar way to Shawn Michaels. After a long and successful career, he had the perfect retirement from professional wrestling. His last match ever was a great performance against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, and we got that iconic moment where HBK told him that he loved him before super kicking him into retirement, and then Flair said goodbye the next night on Raw, and it was perfect. Like I said, all he had to do was stay retired, but he couldn't. He went on to wrestle in TNA, and he finally did retire in 2022 at 73 years old, where the man literally suffered a heart attack. He should not have been in that ring. It was way too dangerous, and now that is the last memory that we have from his time in the ring compared to this iconic moment. Chris Jericho is the next wrestler on this list, and he's had a very interesting career. Y2J quickly found success in WCW, then he jumped over to WWF, where he maintained that level of superstardom. Fast forward to the mid-2000s, and he left to pursue a music career, but just like everyone else who leaves, they always miss wrestling and then come back. Jericho returned and consistently evolved his character, staying on top of the business. He flirted with New Japan before joining All Elite Wrestling during their rise. And I'll admit it, Chris Jericho was thriving in All Elite Wrestling. He was their first champion, and his character was one of the most interesting things about that show. The problem is that he didn't want to give others an opportunity to shine. Chris Jericho became notorious for clinching to his spot on the top and using backstage politics to stay relevant. This also includes attaching himself to promising young stars, and it got to a point where the entire AEW audience was sick of him and just wanted him to leave, and it does look like they're getting what they asked for, because Chris Jericho is heavily rumored to return to WWE. I think it will be nice to see him get a proper retirement tour before finally calling it quits. But the damage has been done, and when the fans get tired of you, it's hard to repair that legacy, especially with that hardcore AEW audience. The next wrestling legend who's actively ruining their legacy is Bret Hart. Look, I'm the first to say it that I'm a huge Bret Hart fan. I put him in my Mount Rushmore of in-ring wrestlers, and you could make the argument that he's the best there ever was. And I think he's got some pretty good takes sometimes. He recently said that it's hard to watch modern day wrestling because it looks so fake, and I gotta agree with that. There's too much choreography, and also we're seeing way too many punches that are not landing. That was something you rarely saw in the old days. I think that wrestling was better in the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. But he also claimed that Rey Mysterio might be the best wrestler of all time. Again, that's a pretty great take because Mysterio does not get enough flowers. However, more and more people are viewing him as an extremely bitter person. He complains about a lot of guys. He doesn't like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan, Goldberg, Ric Flair, and the list could go on forever. And I totally understand why He doesn't like those people. Hulk Hogan screwed him over. Shawn Michaels and Triple H screwed him even worse. And Goldberg literally put the man into retirement early. I understand why he feels the way he does. Some of those guys were just and Bret Hart had to deal with a lot of BS, but I think it's gotten to a point where a lot of fans are tired of hearing him complain 24/7. There is no need for the hitman to hold onto all that negative and toxic energy. In life, we will deal with some horrible people, and we just got to accept that. I think he should focus on the good that happened in his career, because it's a lot better to have gratitude than anger. Next up on this list is Hulk Hogan, and as we know, he sadly passed away earlier this year, and there were a lot of mixed feelings about his death. Some fans were devastated while others were celebrating. And the reason for that was because he was a very polarizing figure. Hulk Hogan's biggest scandal happened in 2015 when there was a leaked video released where he was saying a lot of extremely racist comments that should not even be repeated. This is when he was canceled by the WWE and their fans. But then he did come back a few years later, and when he did come back, it was said that he really did not even apologize. Hulk Hogan's racism is just one of the many things that tarnish his legacy. You also have to consider the fact that he was notorious for burying everyone everywhere. It didn't matter if it was WWE, WCW, or TNA, Hulk Hogan wanted to be on top, and he would use any political power to stay there. Then there was the time that he stopped the wrestlers from forming a union, and then there are even countless lies that he said over the years. He might be a bigger liar than LeBron James. With all that said, everything that he's done has done damage to his legacy, and that's why he's one of the most polarizing figures in wrestling history. It doesn't get any more polarizing than Vince McMahon, who is the next name on this list. McMahon became controversial from the beginning of his run in the wrestling business. When he bought the company from his father, he immediately broke an agreement with all the other territories around the country. He took them out of business and then stole their talent. After that, he's booked some controversial storylines where it looked like he was abusing his power as a writer, and then eventually his product took a hit and he became washed, and a lot of people did not like what he was producing. But nothing could have prepared us for what happened a few years ago in 2022. Vince McMahon was being sued by a former employee of the company, and there were a lot of evil things that he made her do. It really made fans realize that the evil Mr. McMahon character wasn't a character after all. The details in that lawsuit were so horrifying that McMahon was essentially fired from TKO and banned from the wrestling business. His legacy was already cooked, but this just put the final nail on the coffin. And the last name on this list is Chris Benoit. In that ring, he was one of the most gifted wrestlers in the world. There weren't a lot of people that could match his intensity, and sadly, we will never get to appreciate Chris Benoit's legacy. It's been tainted with the tragedy that occurred in 2007. Chris Benoit did the unthinkable. He ended 3 lives on that dark day, and research does show that his brain was severely damaged, and it was one of the worst CTE cases doctors have ever seen. Chris Benoit's story is truly depressing, and I think there will be a cloud casted over WWE forever because of that tragedy. Anyways, that is it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.